your health solutions have to be social for them to be sustainable. There's a social component to working out, and the social component is actually pretty important for your aging process. Start off with something simple, manageable, and then go to something more advanced.
These tests could help you become more efficient at your training. Where do you start? Which one should you do? Which one should you prioritize? Like, what's the process?
A strength test is probably one of the areas to consider.
Yeah.
Right? Because that gives you very good baselines on like where you're starting from, what you should do, and what is the most optimal way to improve. And then you can track your progress from there. If you practice it and see the progress for yourself, I think you'll be more compelled to exercise snack every single day.
Can you really get results from a 4-second workout? That's the question we're tackling today on The Upward Spiral, the podcast dedicated to helping you create and maintain positive momentum in your life. In this episode, we're diving deep into the world of time-efficient health and fitness strategies, specifically designed for busy professionals who are short on time, but still want to prioritize their well-being. We'll explore the latest data, cutting-edge techniques, and practical strategies to optimize your fitness and even aging. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and today I am thrilled to be joined by an incredible guest who embodies the philosophy of efficient and effective health optimization. He's a former captain in the Singapore Armed Forces Commandos, an ultrarunner, an Ironman triathlete, and the founder of allset.sg, a company dedicated to helping people achieve their health goals with minimal time commitment. With his impressive achievements and commitment to healthy aging, I'm incredibly excited to welcome Jing Zhi Chua. Sorry if I've butchered that. I've been in Asia 11 years and my Chinese is appalling. But either way, Jing, I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you and uncover the secrets to achieving peak performance, even with a busy lifestyle.
Thank you for having me. I think you got my name mostly right.
Mostly right. I love that you're being really kind to me. And a lot of friends here will, I don't know if they find it charming or just annoying, but I try.
Thanks for trying. I think I get it all the time, all the way from primary school. Yeah, even Chinese teachers are not getting it right.
Okay, that's making me feel making me feel loads better. Okay, look, I just want to get straight into this today. Let's get into the problem with aging, fitness, and busy working professionals. So I don't know, let's maybe paint a clear picture of the challenges and what are the biggest obstacles that we're facing when it comes to aging, fitness, and overall health.
I think it's a blend of a few things. So you have time, you have energy. For some people, money is a constraint, whether you're having financial commitments to other things in your life, or you're just starting a business, for example, right? I think what's less talked about is your exercise history, your health history, and also your health literacy. So I think those plays a small component, if not to some people a large component, in whether you have obstacles in your health journey or not. Okay,
so those last three: health history, health literacy, and what was the other one?
Oh, I'll mention one before that. There was financial.
Financial. Yeah. So the two, like health history and health literacy. Let's talk about those two. So what are those two?
So, for example, if you have a complex health situation, right? You have not worked out for many years, for example, and that compounds the health situation, right?
Yeah.
Now you suddenly want to get into a workout routine. Well, I think you have to take many steps back and start from an earlier stage, something easier that you can cope with, before advancing to something that a regular and average 20-year-old, for example, can handle, right? The other one is health literacy. So, for example, it's what we are talking about today, right? Yeah. The more knowledge you have, the more you're able to cater to your own circumstance and to customize something that works for you. If you don't have that amount of health literacy, you might be stuck with a solution you think doesn't work and you give up altogether.
You know what? I hadn't really ever thought about it before. Like, I think I'd always thought, that the time, energy, and money for sure. And then maybe a little bit on like my health, because I've had 2 children. So, there's a period kind of after whilst being pregnant and then post-pregnancy where, you do have to take a number of steps back before you can be running, jumping and everything at maybe what you were before. But the health literacy, I don't really think I've spent that much time really thinking about it, maybe because I'm really interested in health and fitness, and it's something information that I will kind of actively seek out. And maybe because I'm in a privileged position where, I've been able to enjoy like training from a relatively young age. Is the health literacy a big problem here in Singapore?
I don't think you can see it from a problem perspective.
Okay.
So for most people, it is a good to have, right? It sounds like a good to have. And at first, that was my thought as well. It is a good to have. For example, one of my reflections last year was on the effect of time-efficient workouts on aging, right? On the surface level, I think drawing the relationship between time and aging, it's pretty obvious. Yeah, you don't age without time, right? Yeah. But I think that's a very surface level understanding. If you look at it or feel it more from an emotional level, in terms of from a social level, right, or a financial level, I think there are many layers to understand. And for example, if I were to draw a continuum, right, from when you're young to old age, at the start of the continuum, you're young, right? At that point, in terms of flexibility, mobility, strength, power, your flexibility is at the peak, right? Your strength, not so much. Yeah. But your flexibility declines over time if you don't do anything about it. And then your strength goes through a different curve. From young, you ideally don't have parents that tell you stop running around so much. I mean, there's a sweet spot to how much it's right for you to run. But then I think many Singapore parents will tell their kids stop running around. But later on in life, they will ask like, why are you not running? Running is good for your health. Right? Yeah. So I think you want to find a sweet spot, right? And then later on in life, in your when you're 12, 13 years old, basically in your teens, that age has been shown to be pivotal in your aging, right? At the age bracket is where you form 40% of your total bone mass density. At around that age is where you have the greatest increase in strength. What someone that age can increase in strength will take an average adult 16 times, 17 times more time, right?
Wow.
So, I mean, we'll talk about the equipment later, but this is data from the equipment. So at that age, an average teen can increase the same amount of strength in 3 weeks, what a typical adult will require an entire year to increase, right?
Wow.
So yeah, at a very young age.
God, I missed an opportunity.
And then you continue on the years you peak in terms of potential of your physical performance around your 30s, depending on how well you're aging, right? So plus minus 5 years or so. And then after that, you experience a sharp decline in your physical health or basically your health, right? When you age, it doesn't go in a very straight line manner. Yeah, there's a sudden drop. Scientists have found there are 2 drops, one around the age of 44 and the other around the age of 60.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So you experience those declines. And then scientists have also found that, for powerlifting athletes, so they are conditioned, after 70 years old, even though they continue to lift, their strength decreases, right? So there's only a certain amount of things you can do within your lifetime to improve your physical performance. And when you look at it from the entire spectrum, you realize that time-efficient workouts are actually very important, not because it is critical for you to, reduce the amount of time to by X percentage or so or what, but more so because you can squeeze in more workouts when there's more impact on your health in the long term, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that was something I only realized last year as well.
Yeah. So my goal this year was actually to be more efficient with my training. I am like a chronic overtrainer. Partly because I really enjoy it, and there's like community aspects. Like when I go to like all my HIIT classes, I love it. Like running is like my therapy. Like I love going for my long runs. I love doing Pilates classes. I walk the dog twice a day, but it does, that compounds. Like, I can end up spending 2-3 hours a day in some form of training. And so this year I was like, I actually want to start being more efficient with it, train less, but have better outcomes. And hopefully not feel as chronically exhausted. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this today, particularly around this idea of a 4-second workout. But before maybe we get into that, what are some of the ineffective approaches? So I've just given you one in terms of the overtraining, but the ineffective approaches to this aging well and hitting your fitness goals.
Got this question many times actually.
Yeah.
Right. But the answer I always default to is along the lines of, for someone that is new to physical exertions and what works, what doesn't work, right? There are lots of options out there. And it's better for you to try it out on your own to see what works for you, because what works for you that might not work for someone else. And if I were to say this is a fad diet, or this is a quick fix, it wouldn't work for the long run, I might be actually surprised by how far you take things. So yeah, coming from the perspective of the more you know, the more you don't know. Yeah. I always tell people, try things out for yourself, right? Sometimes you might be surprised what works for you. What works for me might not work for you as well.
Yeah. I'm so like conditioned though. Like I think growing up in kind of the 90s and the noughties and being a woman, like I am so conditioned that the more you do, the leaner you'll be, the less you eat, the leaner you'll be. And so I've kind of got all of that brainwashing that I'm trying to kind of unravel, but of really sticky beliefs. As we're talking kind of about the literacy, it's almost like there's too much and there's stuff that I believe that's not necessarily true anymore. And then there's that element of enjoyment, but both of those are contributing to the fact that maybe I'm overtraining. And therefore that's why I'm not getting the results that I want, both performance and body composition wise.
My personal journey is I overtrained quite a lot in my younger years. Mm-hmm. Then I took a break around 10 years from exercise to do my business and my career. And then now I'm back, right, exercising. But this time around, I'm pacing myself, taking things one step at a time, and it's much more enjoyable. There are a few components that I would say fundamentals. One is, do you enjoy what you're doing?
That's part of the problem.
Right. And whether it is sustainable. Right. Yeah. If it works for you, then fine. Yeah. If there isn't a problem, then don't try to think of it as a problem.
Well, that's true. I don't have much of a social life, but I also don't care. like if someone wants to hang out with me, let's go for a run. Let's go for an ice bath. Come and do a class with me. Like that's kind of where my friendships come and have a healthy dinner. That's kind of like where my friendships are at the moment. But I think it's more that when you say there's a problem, it's more, I think that overtraining caused me to not get as good a result as I wanted in the Paris Marathon last year. So I really, really wanted to get a 3:45 and I trained for a 3:45, but I didn't listen to my coach. And I, towards the end of my kind of training program, I felt that I hadn't run enough. So on the long runs that he was like, the maximum you should run for is 3 hours, I would run for 4, and I did it on more than one occasion. And then I did Paris Marathon. I came in at 3:51. So I was kind of 6 minutes shy of my target. Still thrilled. But what happened is I just went off way too quickly, and the last 10, 15 kilometers was just agony. And I came back and my running coach was like, you overtrained. You didn't listen to me. You overtrained. And that's why your legs blew out in the race. So this is why this year I'm like, right, I need to be more efficient with my training. I need to pull back and I need to listen to my coaches and maybe try to believe, have faith and believe that maybe doing less will achieve more.
Well, sometimes that's the case.
Okay.
In this case, probably, since your coach says so, right? But I think everyone's context is slightly different. Yeah. Some people need to do more, and in fact, a lot of people need to do more.
Okay. I love how you're being like really politically correct now. You're like, I don't want to promise everyone that they can do a 4-second workout and it's going to be amazing. Okay, but let's maybe touch on the kind of like the data side. So, what does the latest research tell us about effective fitness and aging interventions for busy individuals? You know, if you're struggling with the time element and maybe the energy and the money to a certain extent, what's the research telling us about what is effective or could be effective?
So I think like I would structure this question in a 2-part answer manner.
Amazing, go for it.
So the first part I would think is there's a social component to working out, and the social component is actually pretty important for your aging process, right? Okay. Research has found many evidence on how important the social aspect is to aging. Some akin it to smoking, right? Mm-hmm. Poor social health is like being a smoker, for example. And recently, I think it was last month, there was a research that said that living with a partner has impact similar to exercise on your health, right? Yeah. So I think the social aspect of exercise is important. If you can cater to that, please do. Yeah. And then the other part is about exercise and aging. Mm-hmm. So I would further divide this answer into 2. One is exercise interventions that change fundamentally how you work out, right? And the other group is exercise interventions that improves the efficiency of how you work out. Let me give you some examples. Mm-hmm. Exercise interventions that change the way you work out include the isometric tests and training that we'll be discussing about. They help you save plenty of time because they help you structure your workout and prioritize your workout. From there, you can eliminate some of the workouts that if you do not have time, then you don't have to prioritize them and don't have to do them. Exercise interventions in this category include isometric testing and training, include muscle oxygen levels, detecting the muscle oxygen level in your muscles, and then understanding which part you need to work on more. And depending on your goals, this could include cognitive training, I think your audience will be familiar with this, dual tasking, right? So those few exercise interventions fall within this bucket, right? The other bucket would be improving the efficiency of your workout. That is, examples of this include finding out your zone 2 so that can optimize more for your marathon or for your VO2 max, for example. Mm-hmm. Others includes blood flow restriction training. And then there are other examples like EMS and things like that, right? I would categorize them into these 2 buckets.
Okay, so really some of the most effective interventions will be first of all, make it fun, make it social. And the second is data. So almost make it personalized and make it so and use that data to make sure what you're doing is going to be effective for you as an individual.
Yep.
Okay. And why do you think maybe people aren't doing these 2 things?
Well, I think it's partly what I mentioned earlier about not understanding how important time efficiency is. I think that's part of the problem. There's some education that needs to be done there. Secondly, is not knowing like the options out there. And then lastly, people aren't exercising at all. So I think that's a further step back that you have to try to solve. But it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. If you know like a short workout can help you solve the problem, then
I want to talk about both of these. I'm going to talk about kind of the data and the and that side in a second, but the social side, I think there's this element of maybe joining a class or joining like a walking group or like a running club. It can feel like really daunting. Walking into a gym for the first time and not knowing how to use the equipment, all of those things can feel like a lot if you've never done it before. They feel like a lot for somebody who's seasoned in it, right? You know, sometimes going into a new class or a new environment can be really scary, or meeting new people can be a lot. I think how can we get people thinking about, okay, who can I socialize with? What activities can we do? You know, are there communities? Are there groups? Like how can we get people who maybe, if there's anybody listening here who's like, I don't exercise at all, and I'd like to start and I want it to be social and fun. How do we get people?
Yeah, that's one of the questions my startup actually set on solving.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we believe that your health solutions have to be social for them to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So we've tried a few ways so far, right? Forming clubs, right? Where people do their testing and then compete with each other, sort of compete on a challenge.
Yeah.
And then see if that is sustainable or not. So that's one of the experiments we've done. We're starting to buddy people up, right?
Okay.
So if a small group is a bit too intimidating, we find based on those tests, who's of similar level to you and whether you want to speak to that person or not, whether you want to go for a workout together with that person or not, things like that. We're still doing social experiments. So maybe the next time around I'll be able to give you a better answer.
Okay. I really like that your company's doing that as well, that you're doing these social tests as well as the physical tests as well. I think, because I think that there could be a huge unlock for somebody in that. And I have made so many friends from going to like classes and meeting people, and a lot of my community now, because, you know, I go to these classes or I join a running club and everything else.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, we think it's important.
Yeah, it is. I love that. Okay, so the other side is all of these different types of tests. Okay, first of all, they sound scary and they sound expensive. So, you know, okay, if you know that, you know, these tests could help you become more efficient at your training, where do you start? You know, which one should you do? Which one should you prioritize? Like, what's the process in kind of maybe going through that? Because the ones that you reeled off, I've done a few of them, but I haven't done all of them. Do I need to do more? And I'm a data nerd. Where do we start?
So let me solve it might be expensive portion first.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a pretty direct answer to that.
Yeah.
So I did some calculations essentially. If I were an athlete myself, if I weren't a coach, right? If I weren't a professional offering such testing services, and I were to start my health routine today after not exercising for 10 years, how would I do it? And I compared doing the testing and then executing based on the test results versus not doing the testing and then executing based on what I know or what I experiment along the way. And the test results one actually would save me even more time and more money, right, than if I were to do it without all the tests. So I think I can break it down for your audience, right, in the show notes or something like that. Yeah. But essentially, I think whatever solves for time also solves for money. And to your question of how would you go about optimizing, I think step one is knowing your strength. Yeah, not knowing your strengths, but knowing how much strength you can output.
How strong you are.
Yeah, how strong you are.
Okay.
And strength is linked to power, which is linked to your functional performance. Yeah. And that's a very easy step for people. It's an accessible step for people because most people would be able to exert some form of strength, right? Yeah. And that's that forms a foundation block for the next test, which is understanding your VO2 max or your training zones, right? Yeah. Some of the VO2 max tests provides training zones, and those are the ones that I would say are useful for you. But if not knowing your training zones, that would be the next tier. And that's useful because essentially you need to improve on your strength and your cardiovascular health if you want to improve on your overall health.
Just before, how do we measure your strength? Like, what's the test for measuring how strong you are?
So I think there are many tests
Okay.
out there. And to start off, paper, this is the first paper I've seen, it was published last year, started recommending doctors to prescribe counter movement jump tests as part of their health screening, right? Yeah, and this is the first time I'm seeing it on a research paper, and I thought it was eye-opening because I think that's the direction to go. But counter movement jump tests, where essentially you stand on two legs, dip down into a squat, and then jump up as high as you can, and you dip fast and you jump up fast, and then see how high you can jump, right? And the power you output when you jump, things like that. I think that is still quite complex for most people. Yeah, especially the seniors. Something like a grip strength test or sit to stand test is useful. And I'm not saying this without evidence, because I know recently the equipment providers that I'm using for all these tests, they've spoken to Singapore government, the health groups in Singapore, and they are piloting this sort of testing at GP clinics, starting with 10 GP clinics if it's successful, and then you start seeing it island-wide, right? So yeah, they're integrating these tests into the health screening protocol, right? So that's a good place to start. And those are some of the tests to start with. Obviously, with the equipment, you can do more than 1,000 tests. That's what the provider claims. But yeah, choosing the test takes some knowledge as well.
And so who's the provider? What is this tool or platform? Like what is it that you're using?
So we are using technology like force plates, right? Dynamo, things like that. And these are general terms for equipment that are in that category. So I'm using a particular service provider. The brand is called Vald. The organization is called Vald, VALD. And I went with them because they are sort of an AI company, right? And they pride themselves more for the software than the hardware, even though the hardware technology is pretty impressive on its own. And on the software side, what they provide that is valuable are things like baselines and things like norms. So baselines include, for example, if you are a sprinter or you are a long distance runner, what amount of power output should your quads have, should your calf have, should your hamstrings have in order for you to run injury-free. And then there are baselines for shoulder as well, athletic shoulder test, that's what they call it. If you Google it, I think you can find it.
Yeah.
Right. And there are the other sets of baselines where it's basically normative data, which percentile you are in for your age, for your gender, based on your body weight. And you can then compare from different body parts, which are the ones that you should work on. Yeah. They have, the last I've seen, which was a report last year, I believe, they have more than 54 million health records, musculoskeletal health records worldwide. So I think it's a growing database, and it's something that if Singapore government picks up, you will have more accurate norms to peg where you perform to.
And so, look, we've talked about getting the data. So maybe once you've found your community and you've got and you've kind of identified some things that are going to be really fun for you, like activities fun that you want to do. The second, obviously, you've got some data, and then so putting it into action. How does kind of the data then put into a plan? Like, how do you put this into a plan that's going to be as efficient as possible for you if you're limited on time?
I think this was one of the surprising findings by the equipment company. I don't think they saw this coming, to be honest. So the tests you do are essentially static tests where there are no movement. Turns out this static test can also be used for training in a very time-efficient manner. So take, for example, let me explain the equipment a little bit first to give a bit context. So one of the equipment is called force stacks. Basically, you can think of it as high-end weighing machines. So instead of just telling you your weight, it is able to tell you the amount of pressure you put on it, the amount of force, the rate of development of that force, as well as using mathematical equations, how high you jump, right? just by jumping on the plates. So using these plates, you can then detect the force. For example, if you are pushing against the wall, if you put the plates on the floor and you push against the wall, you're able to calculate how much force you are pushing the wall because, right, of Newton's laws. So this sort of testing method where you are pushing maximum strength without any movement can also be used for exercises. And I did this over a period of 22 days last year, where I did 4 seconds of maximum exertion on a particular exercise, a full body strength test. And I found my strength to increase after the end of 22 days by more than 30%. And this results aligned to researchers' result on 8 participants. This researcher is the head of strength conditioning at Singapore Sports Institute, Dr. Danny Lam. And he did this research with a final year project student from SIT, Singapore Institute of Technology Physiotherapy student.
Yeah.
And they found similar results. Basically, that study, the participants did lower body contractions and for a short period of time. And they found that the participants improved the walking speed, lower body strength, power, etc. So
wow.
Pretty amazing.
Okay, so this 4-second workout over 22 days improved your strength?
Yeah, improved my strength. It improved my rate of force development, which is power to a certain extent. I think there are some nuances to this sort of isometric strength in comparison to dynamic strength, but it has been found to be transferable.
Yeah.
They are not exactly the same, but it is still a form of measuring your maximum strength.
Okay, this is insane. And I've got to ask, what was the exercise?
Oh, I did an isometric mid-thigh pull, but I reckon if you do, for example, a grip strength test and you clench your fists every day for 4 seconds at the end, especially if you're unconditioned, at the end of 3 weeks, you would find similar results. Your strength has improved, your grip strength has improved.
So when you say it like that, I'm like, yeah, of course, right? Because you're training your grip, right? You're like over and over again. So I think when you say it like that, I'm like, yeah, well, of course, that's going to improve.
The thing is, I don't think this sort of exercise was popular in the past. And a reason for that is there wasn't such technology to improve, there wasn't such technology to detect the amount of pressure, the amount of force you're outputting when there was no movement.
Yeah.
Right. So it is with such technology that there was more research done on such exercises, isometric exercises. Although isometric exercises have been researched on plenty in the past, because isometric exercises included things like your planks.
Yeah.
Those are isometric hold exercises. Now we're doing isometric push or isometric pull exercises. Those haven't been much researched on, right? And recently, because of those equipment, there are more research. And then we find that actually, hey, this sort of training can apply to everyday people as well as athletes.
Okay, I was just about to ask this. Like, who's this going to be most effective for? Is this a professional athlete? Is this, an everyday athlete is probably what I would call myself. Is it, people who've never exercised at all? Is it elderly people? Like who is this going to work the best for?
So if you're talking about comparing different groups, I don't think I have the exact numbers to tell you this is more efficient for this group or that group. But it's pretty curious you ask that question as well, because isometric exercises have been found to improve things like tendon health better than other exercises. It has been found to improve your blood pressure more than other exercises and things like that. I think depending on what your goals are, isometric exercises might be or might not be a priority for you.
Yeah.
Right. So I was mentioning about Dr. Danny Lam. He puts all his sprinters on isometric exercises year round just because sprinters have higher tendency of tendon problems.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if you are an everyday person, you might choose to do dynamic exercises, and isometric exercises in a 50-50 way, for example.
Yeah.
Or at the start of a season and not at the end of a season. And to that point, isometric exercises have been implemented closer to race day or event days, where you need to basically exert your personal best, because they are safer for you to exert maximum strength, right? So there's lesser risk of injury, and hence it does make sense to reduce the risk of injury as you're closer to your event, and then implement isometric exercises. Other application of isometric exercises include for endurance runners, just like yourself, because of the different ways it improve your running form. Plyometric exercises and isometric exercises have different mechanisms of improving your running gait, running efficiency, essentially. Hence, you should do both, right, as much as possible. There was a research done that compared compared doing plyometric as well as doing isometric, which one improved running efficiency most in endurance runners. And I think partly because most runners weren't doing isometric, hence there was a greater improvement. And the recommendation was to incorporate isometrics as well.
Okay. Could you give me some examples of the types of exercises for isometric and plyometric?
So most of the exercises, or many of the exercises that you do dynamically, can be converted into an isometric form.
Okay.
Right. For example, an isometric squat is basically pushing against the pin of a squat rack without moving. Right. And then a dynamic squat is basically using the barbell or dumbbells and going up and down a squat.
Okay, so sorry, so you're saying you'd stay in a squat, so you're saying in a squat hold?
Yeah.
Yeah, with or without weight?
With pushing, so you're pushing the weight. So that there are different variations of isometric. So in an isometric hold exercise, you are, for example, staying stationary in a squat position with the weights. So that's an isometric hold exercise.
Yeah.
In an isometric push exercise, you're pushing, but your position doesn't change. You're in like a quarter squat or a half squat position, right?
Okay, and you're pushing against a stationary bar.
Yeah, something that doesn't move, essentially.
Okay.
And this example, if it's too complicated, you can have a more easier explanation, which is a bicep curl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to do a bicep curl, a dynamic bicep curl, it would be, well, this movement that you're doing, right? Yeah. An isometric bicep curl, for example, is one that at your end range, you're just pushing as much into your biceps as possible, right?
Okay.
That's an isometric bicep curl. Obviously, an isometric bicep curl has different range you can do.
So
right?
could you be like trying to get...
So if I'm pushing against the table as high as possible, that's an isometric bicep curl. It is at this angle, and it has been found that doing different angles for your isometric workout has different sort of benefits as well, right?
It's so funny, like pressing on the table like that, I'm just not feeling it in the bicep at all.
Oh, you go harder, right?
Just feel it in the ribs. Okay, this is interesting. And do you need special equipment for this? Obviously, we've just pressed against the table, but do you need special equipment?
So you can utilize gym equipment. It's funny you ask, because you can actually utilize equipment outside the gym.
Okay.
For example, you can use a yoga band, right? I actually brought a band. Do you want to?
After.
Okay, yeah. But essentially
Yeah.
coming back, you can use a yoga band, or there are specially built bands that can withstand a large amount of force without being elastic. And that band can also allow you to put your hand in different positions for you to stay in those positions while doing different exercises, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so there are specialized equipment, but you don't have to go for them. You can go for very everyday equipment.
Okay. And so this type of training, this is going to be great at potentially helping you build some strength. Is it going to be good for your cardiovascular fitness?
Yeah, so in in terms of cardiovascular fitness, well, if we are talking about basically the heart health, right, without the functional aspects, I think there aren't that many benefits.
Yeah.
But if you are talking about measuring your cardiovascular performance, for example, through a VO2 max test, you would see some of these results. Some of these exercises improve your results for your VO2 max test just because you can run faster.
Yeah.
Right. Because it improves your strength and then improves your running.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're stronger, you're ultimately going to be a better runner, less injuries, and be able to.
Yeah. You can train better as a runner as well. Yeah.
Okay. And does this type of training help you gain muscle?
Yes.
Yeah.
So isometric, before even all this equipment, is a natural part of the physiotherapy's arsenal, for example. So what I mean is during rehab, one of the steps is isometric training, even before all this equipment came up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are two uses for it. One is improving your muscle function. The other one is improving your muscle mass. So that's hypertrophy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I said, doing it at different angles induce different benefits, right? Doing it at a larger angle, if I'm not wrong, induce more hypertrophy benefits, or it's the other way around. But essentially, yeah, one of the ways.
Because I'm always like, obviously, I've got performance and body composition goals. You know, I want to perform best at whatever I'm training for, whether that's high rocks or whether that's, a marathon. And then I also want kind of my body composition goals and then health goals, of course, right? You know, like probably most importantly is the health goals. You know, I want to be fit and strong and healthy for a long time, you know, and a lot of the time that I'm spending now, I'm hoping is an investment in my future as I age, you know, is an investment in my health as I get older.
But just to be clear, if you want to improve on your hypertrophy, isometric might not be the best method, the most efficient method, especially if you're not doing rehab, right? Yeah. So if you have options like eccentric training that has been shown to improve hypertrophy in comparison to isometric, and you have access to eccentric training, then you might want to go for that if your goal is hypertrophy. It really depends on your goals.
Yeah, I was about to say, so this is where, coming back, this is where like all the data is important, right?
Yeah. The other important thing, because, you know, so far, up to now, it sounds like isometric training is everything that you should do.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the case.
Yeah.
There are some reasons you don't do isometric training like year round, or you don't want to do it at specific point of time, or do too much of it. Because, for example, isometric training, especially when you're exerting maximal strength, you have to understand that you're exerting maximal strength across, for example, 4 seconds, right? Or 6 seconds. Well, the recommendation is between 30 to 90 seconds in total in terms of volume. And you're exerting maximal strength for that amount of time. That causes quite a bit of blood rush to your head. And for some people, they might be giddy at the end of the workout if they do too much. The other important part to mention is also that there's a difference between dynamic strength and isometric strength. There's been found to have some overlaps, but the best combination is still for isometric training to pair it with a plyometric workout, right? So typically how we would do it, when I say we, it's like my team as well as the head of strength conditioning at Singapore Sports Institute, as well as, you know, other practitioners who do isometric strength training will do it, is in a contrast set form, where the first part of that set you would do an isometric exercise, and the second part you do something explosive.
Yeah.
The easy way to think about it is on a movement spectrum. On one end you have totally static, which is isometric, and then at the other end you have maximum dynamic, which is plyometric, right?
Yeah.
So if you cater to both, it has been found to improve your functional performance, your dynamic performance.
Okay, it's really interesting. I just finished Stacey Sims' book, Raw. Big fan of Stacey. Oh my God, I think she's amazing. I'm just like devouring all of her content at the moment. So I just think she's incredible. But one of the things that I kind of took away from Raw is actually just doing some more of that dynamic, making sure that I'm doing more jumps, box jumps, burpee broad jumps. So it's really trying to get a few more of things like that in that are going to help again, like as we're aging.
Including plyometrics into your workout, I think it's another whole conversation altogether.
Yeah.
There are different considerations. So if you go into plyometrics not conditioned, you can actually get hurt, right? Because, for example, if you are jumping down or jumping up to your maximum height and then landing, that actually has a lot of impact, multiple times your body weight's impact on your body. Right. And if you do too many repetitions of those, then you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like as a runner, I've been avoiding doing, big jumps because I don't want to like do damage to my knees and land funny or hurt my ankle or anything like that. But I think now I've been trying to think, okay, I probably need to put some more of that in.
Yeah, that is a progression to most exercises, right? Start off with something simple, manageable, and then go to something more advanced. But when you reach the things that are more advanced, it's actually pretty cool, I would say.
I think that's it. It's just my problem. I just want to do everything. And unfortunately, I've got a job and children and a life and a podcast and everything else that I can't quite squeeze it all in. I think if I had my time again, I would try to become a professional athlete.
Oh, so coming back to your point about being time efficient as well as understanding what to do, that's where some of these tests come in. So for example, if we find that your power output, for example, your jump, right, is in the 90th percentile, but your strength output is in the 30th percentile, then it's pretty obvious that your strength is the limiter of your physical performance. Then you might need to work more on your strength, and then you can stop doing your plyometrics and just focus on your strength until your strength catches up. This is just one example.
Yeah.
Right. There are other examples like single leg jump, whether you concentrate on single leg or doing both legs is fine, things like that.
Yeah. How often should we do these testings?
Well, it really depends on your goals.
Yeah.
So far, the cadence that I've settled into, which I think is sustainable, is twice a year. Right. So you do before you start your workouts, you do one test to find out which are the workouts you should do. Yeah. And then that eliminates your training time by 30 to, I would say, 90%. Right. Yeah. And then towards the end of your season, before wherever you're training for, or if you're just training for health, at the end of your season, do a test again to see where you fare from all this training. You can do a test in between to see if you want to tweak anything. Yeah. But at this point, after settling into it for like 1 year plus, I say like that's optional.
Okay, that's interesting. I just did my lactate test again, kind of about 4 or 5 weeks ago, just to see how my body was clearing lactate. And unfortunately, it's kind of declined versus when I'd last done the test, which was fine because I was like training for the Paris Marathon and I was putting in a lot more miles back then. But I got a couple of races coming up and like I know what I need to work towards now. But a lot of my tests that I do are all around my endurance. So it's all kind of my metabolic testing and my sweat testing, lactate testing, getting those kind of exact heart rate zones, understanding when my body is utilizing more carbs than fat for fuel, and obviously how much salt I'm losing per liter of sweat, which living in Singapore when it's so humid and so hot, it's really important to know that because we're losing a lot of fluid and a lot of salt. But I haven't done any strength testing, and now I'm like, okay, this could be the missing piece.
Well, after you try, you will have a better idea.
Yeah. Oh man. I honestly, there's about a million other questions I want to ask you, and I cannot help with these podcasts to just go, when I'm so interested in a topic, to be like, but what about me? And like telling you all about like my fitness journey. But I hope this has been really helpful for our listeners and maybe given everyone some food for thought.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I think this idea of a 4-second workout can actually be, it's not the only thing you should be doing. I think I probably got that takeaway, but you can see significant improvements from a 4-second workout over 22 days.
Yeah, especially if you're unconditioned. I think that last part is important. But yeah, for many people out there, they are unconditioned, right? Yeah. So it's probably useful for them.
Yeah. So what's your advice for maybe anyone who's listening who is unconditioned and knows that they need to start moving again for their health, but does want to be as efficient as possible about what they're doing? What's your top advice for them?
I think it really depends on context. Again, when I give advice, it can be a bit dangerous. For people around my level or where I was, coming back from a 10-year hiatus from exercise, for example, right? A strength training is probably, a strength test is probably one of the areas to consider.
Yeah.
Right? Because that gives you very good baselines on like where you're starting from, what you should do, and what is the most optimal way to improve. And then you can track your progress from there.
And then anyone who's a little bit more advanced, it's maybe talking to yourself or other sports scientists about what could be the right test for them, or maybe what they're missing in the mix.
There are many modalities out there.
Yeah.
Isometric testing and training is only one of them. You should consider as much as possible what works best for you.
And it's not just a singular modality. It's often a combination.
Yeah. Even to today, my team is still experimenting, like what works best, whether we can optimize this further, whether any single equipment can further slash the time efficiency, to cut it down, to cut a workout down by X percentage, things like that, and whether it's a good idea to invest.
Yeah. Okay. I want to join your team. This sounds like fun. So I love that. I think that's it. It's about being time efficient but effective as well, and it's trying to find that sweet spot between making sure that what you're doing is still effective, right?
Yeah. I think one point I would like to add is the workout being 4 seconds or seeing some results from 4 seconds per day is actually very encouraging. So it's one thing to hear about it, but if you practice it and see the progress for yourself, I think you'll be more compelled to do a exercise snack every single day, right? So I don't know how long my streak is today. I probably should start counting today as day one so that I can have some data, right? Yeah. But essentially, I've been on this 4-second thing, 4-second workout routine for a number of months already. And even in my off season, I know that if I do a 4-second workout, it might be of benefit to me. The risk reward is just so imbalanced that I would commit that 4 seconds. Yeah. And that probably is good enough to help me get started or to help me not stagnate during off season.
You just said something then that I was like, this is wild. Like an exercise snack is so good. Like just that concept of, just like that bite size, that exercise snack I think is great. I think there's this part of me that just because of the way that I've been conditioned with exercise and fitness, that there's this huge skeptic in me that 4 seconds isn't going to have an impact. It's not going to do anything. Yeah. But I think why not give it a go? It's only 4 seconds. Exactly. And then let the data tell you if it's doing anything.
Yeah. Some of the interesting findings that I've experienced with this routine includes improving my upper body strength, even though I wasn't doing any upper body workout. But basically because I was pushing the wall, right, to improve my lower body strength, my upper body strength improved. And I found that out through the testing, right? It's quite amazing. Yeah.
Oh, right. I love it. I can't wait to hear more about it, I'm going to link to your YouTube channel below as well, because you are sharing like your journey and some of these experiments on there, right?
Yeah. And yeah, we are also holding courses on Isometric now.
Yeah.
It turns out that many physios as well as gyms, basically fitness wellness professionals, have hopped on to the device that we started sharing last year. And yes, there are more than 50 of them now. Yeah. And it's kind of a sunk cost thing, right? You invest in the equipment, now you want to know how to do the testing and the training.
Yeah, well,
right. So the workshop has been picking up momentum.
Okay, amazing. I can't wait. I'm going to I want to come and do some testing with you and come and try some of these classes as well. But I will link to everything there. You've got an amazing Substack. So anybody that's listening, please, I'll link to it below and you can sign up, because just some of the insight that's coming out of you and your team is just brilliant.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for coming on. If anyone's got any questions, pop them below and I'll make sure Jing answers them, because I know I'm going to watch this back and be like, oh, crap, I should have asked that. Oh, okay, I'm probably going to be the only person commenting on this video. I'm going to be, there's going to be 100 comments just from me, because this whole thing is just really fascinating.
I think you'd be surprised. I think the world of isometric is picking up.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'll link to everything below, and thank you so much to everyone listening. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends and family and hit the subscribe button. And thank you so much, Jing. And thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Bye.